Hello guys, this is your friend Shinobi Addict 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto defied the council and won the hearts of Konoha's strongest women part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. In many parallel worlds, there are multiple events that may occurred. They may have many similarities, but at the same time completely different altogether. And one must ask themselves, what different changes could occur? What could be different from one another? What can really happen in one world, could it really happen in another? All that can be said is this: life has its own set of twists and turns that can lead into any direction. As such, this specific world has its own twists and turns that begin after a beginning revelation. In a deserted open field training ground, 3 long wooden stakes towered over the never-ending fields of the training grounds, nearly touching the sky. It was the hottest part of the day. The sun's heat was scorching for any poor soul who dared venture out at this time. These grounds were almost empty, except for the presence of one eccentric blonde-haired boy who donned whisker-like birthmarks on each of his cheeks which could have almost been considered cute for most girls, and his trademark orange tracksuit. Most considered the boy an eyesore, but Naruto Uzumaki thought otherwise. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto roared out his signature jutsu, his fingers quickly intertwining and forming the necessary hand seal. Instantaneously on command, no less than 200 clones popped into existence, spreading across the entirety of the vast field. They were in front of him, behind him, in the trees, and some were even half-soaked as they were standing at a nearby stream. The real Naruto stood in the center of the training ground, as he wasn't even bothered being surrounded by an entire army of clones that had the same mischievous grins as the original one. One of the clones who was crouching in a tree branch. "Are you ready?" he yelled out to his legion of clone brethren as he raised his fist with much eagerness. In response to the question, the other clones simultaneously cheered out such as loudly with equal excitement. "Yeah," they shouted in return as all of them charged at the original, some running towards him, some beginning to throw shurikens while others jumped down from the sky wielding kunai. The real Naruto charged forward at a fast pace to dodge the rain of shurikens. Then he took out some shurikens of his own from his pouches. He was ready to take on his own army of clones. He then tossed 3 shuriken from each hand at the clones in front of him. The clones easily deflected them in response as they continued to charge at the real Naruto. "You're gonna have to do better than that, boss," the nearest clone declared as he rushed in with 100 clones behind him. Each had a kunai in their hands. The real Naruto such smirked at them, not feeling corner at all. "Don't think I'll make it easy for you, Dadbayo," he shouted as he continued his charge. When he got a few feet to the closest clone, he delivered a few swift kicks towards their stomachs, making a few poof out of existence. Then he sent out a barrage of chakra-enhanced punches. This made more to also go poof as well. Then he backpedaled when he saw many clones falling right on top of him. When he got far enough he stood in his brawler stance. "Time to try something new. Wind style. Air bullet," he declared as he went through a set of hand signs to prepare his jutsu before he then sucked in enough air before blasting it out of his mouth in small condensed bullets at the clones. Many clones were destroyed upon impact from the bullets, but there were still many more left. Naruto had saw this jutsu from the scroll since it was some of the only jutsu that he could learn. He tried it out instantly though he failed miserably at the first time, but he liked the idea of a long-range jutsu, so over the course of the 1-week break he practiced it and all of the new things he had learned every single day. Naruto had at first had only wasted chakra and gained a massive sore throat as a result, but he never gave up and only on the 5th day, he managed to gain a very small version of the air bullet. But that was more than good progress from someone who didn't got any training on an elemental jutsu. That was when Naruto learned that apparently, he had a possible affinity for wind chakra nature, as it would have taken months to get where he was now. "What?" the clones yelled out as the original Naruto then began to shot more of them with multiple blasts of air. The clones tried to evade the attack, But Naruto had managed to take down at least 30 clones, but there was still half an army to get through. What's even worse is that the clones are preparing for an attack. All the remaining clones then went through the same hand signs the original and called out the jutsu's name. Wind style. Air bullet. They all declared in unison as they also sucked in them air before firing as they all hit the original. Though many disappeared from the strains of using the jutsu, it was well worth it at the sight of many air bullets hitting the area where the original was located. Alright, we got him. One of the remaining clones cheered as the other remaining clones smirked at the thought of beating the original as they looked at the cloud of dust that was created. Or at least that's what his clones thought. When the dust finally cleared, all they managed to saw was a destroyed log and some small craters in the ground. All of the clones looked at the area with confusion until one figured out what happened. Substitution. One of the clones yelled out angrily while he and the rest were still shocked by this that they didn't notice there was a shadow right behind the clone that revealed the jutsu, ready to take him and many clones out. That's right, pal, the original declared. The clone only had enough time to widen his eyes before Naruto reduced him to smoke as a kunai was shoved right behind his head. When the still stunned clones turned around, the original quickly made the same hand seals. Wind style. Air bullet. Naruto once again declared as he sent out 5 blasts of air, but the attacks were only able to take out 3 clones, with only 2 clones able to dodge Naruto's attack by dodging to the sides. The original didn't let this chance go to waste as he charged forward. Crap. The clones all swore out after being defeated with a strong punches to the gut. Just a few more clones left. The real Naruto said, though he was panting from exhaustion he still had a smirk god on his face. The clones were also panting as their chakra started to deplete rapidly as they were ready to disperse at any second now. Then one of the clones suddenly got a bolt of a clever yet very stupid idea. Well. One thing left to do, he said as he smirked with a very mischievous expression on his face. The remaining clones turned to look at the clone who said that, what? The remaining clone asked in unison. As if waiting for the clones to ask, the clone just smirked with a fox-like grin in response. Time go out with a bang. The clone answered. Another clone raised an eyebrow to that, but then they all smirked at realizing what their fellow clone meant. Exploding clones, huh? The clone figured as he and the rest were now smirking the same way at the other one. Now this really is going to be a blast. Another clone said as he cracked his knuckles. Then the remaining clones turned towards the original and began to gather all of their remaining chakra, condense it all into one point. Exploding shadow clone jutsu. They all then declared as they rushed at the real Naruto. Like with the shadow clones, the exploding variation of the jutsu was also inside of the forbidden scroll. He found it right under the original shadow clone jutsu, and as the original it needs even more chakra as well as having a good affinity with the creations of clones so that they themselves can execute such a jutsu. Regardless of the warnings, he already knew he had to learn it, and since it was also chakra base, Naruto only had to practice it for a few days. But ironically, he managed to learn it was thanks to his lack of chakra control, as he always gave them much more chakra than needed, but thanks to that the clones were able to use this more powerful variation of the jutsu. Ah crap. Naruto got out, paling as he watched the clones come into him all at once, each ready to explode. Suicide bombers. Are you serious, Datbayo? He yelled out at them while preparing himself for the onslaught. Hey, don't blame us. You're the one who learned the jutsu, Datbayo. The clones replied in unison. Naruto face faulted at that response, but he knew they did have a point. They were his clones after all. The clones would do something only if the original one would do as well. Naruto didn't have time to think about this too much though as the clones charged in, all ready to self-destruct. Naruto continued to pant from exhaustion. He was almost out of chakra. Alright, I think it's time to use it. He then decided as closed his eyes, yelling inside his mind. Alright, Fox. I'm going to need a bit of help here. He asked the being inside of him. Suddenly red chakra poured out of Naruto's body, making it look like he was on fire. A moment passed as the clones were getting closer until. Reckless little idiot. The QB simply responded in an annoyed tone. It was his container reckless decision. When Naruto learned about the QB no Kitsune demon sealed inside him, he figured that the demon fox would try to want and break out by any means. But what he didn't know exactly how to contact to demon, however his luck clearly decided to work for him at the time, though he sometimes questioned if it really was good or rotten luck after he got to meet said Kitsune and how he really was, let's just say, it wasn't what he expected. Flashback no Jutsu. It was late at night after Naruto defeated Mizuki and became an official shinobi for Konoha, all of it being made official thanks to the third Hokage for successfully using the Shadow Clone Jutsu. At the same time, the Hokage told the blonde boy most of the details about the QB and the dangers of it along with apologizing to him about never telling him, though Naruto did felt mad for not been told why he was treated like that all those years by the civilians, other shinobis and with the exception of Iruka the rest of his teachers, he still had the heart to forgive his grandfather-like figure with his normal grin. Naruto had soon returned to his crummy apartment later that day as he looked at the ceiling. Damn Datbeo. He got out in annoyance. I got the QB that the fourth Hokage fought sealed inside of me. He reminded himself as small traces of resentment were inside of his heart. Now he may still respects and sees him a he idol, but he still hated that he had to bear such a burden. Then after he took a long bath, he was now finally dressed up in his night clothes alongside with his silly animal hat. He was really tired and exhausted after everything that has happened as a yawn escaped his mouth. Geez, I'm really sleepy Datbeo. He got out as he looked at his clock and saw it was really late. Midnight. He got out before smirking. Alright, I better get some sleep, then I gotta start my training. He soon decided in excitement as he then jumped towards the bed and landed with a plop on it. Then his eyes were slowly starting to close as he was entering the realm of dreams. Finally they closed and his consciousness finally left. Drip. Drip. After sleeping for what seemed to be half an hour, Naruto could soon hear the sounds of dripping water which caused his eyes to slowly begin to open. What the hell Datbeo? He grumbled out as he was still half asleep. Then when he finally opened them, he didn't saw the roof of his crappy apartment building, instead he was a very thick concrete one. What? Naruto got out as he turned his head and finally felt that was floating on a layer of water. Okay. Either this is a dream or someone threw me in a sewer, again. He then remarked with much confusion and a groan at the thought of yet again having to burn his clothing. But when Naruto stood up, he got a good look around and saw that this sewer was completely different than any he had ever seen or been before as it had thick pipes that were puke yellow while another was a thicker pale red. They had this strange feel to it along with seeing multiple corridors with the pipes going in and out. Okay, then where the hell am I Datbeo? He asked himself as he continued to walk through the sewer. This definitely ain't the usual sewers. He added. But before could do anything else, Naruto then began to hear heavy breathing echo throughout the concrete sewer walls along with deep tone chuckling from the deepest parts of this strange place. Finally, I've been waiting for 12 years to finally meet you. A deep, menacing voice then growled out from the same direction as the breathing and chuckling. This made Naruto stop dead on his tracks upon hearing this voice as he also felt a very ominous aura as well. What? The hell? Naruto responded with a gulp as then began to feel some killing intent. That must be. He got out as he had a very good idea what or who it was as he began to walk towards the killing intent once more, but still with the sense of dread filling his soul. The closer Naruto got, the more he could heard the deep chuckling from the source of the killing intent. Well little boy, it seems that you indeed have some brains in that empty head of yours. The menacing voice then stated. To that comment, Naruto gained a tick mark as he soon heard that little remark about his intelligence, but continued to move forward. Soon enough he arrived at the source. There was a very large room which had a massive gate with huge and thick bars. Naruto could only stare at the gate with a baffled expression on his face. Whoa! Naruto got out in both amazement and slight fear. as he had to admit that this gate was ridiculously big. If he had to make a rough estimate, it would probably be twice as big than the village's gates. The fourth really knew how to make a seal datbao. He thought to himself as he was really impressed of the late Hokage's incredible skill in seals, but there was one thing that he really wanted to know. But how the hell does this fit inside of me? He then asked himself as he tilted his head with a confused expression. And as if reading Naruto's thoughts, the most powerful of all the Beast chuckled with an evil tone. This is a mindscape. Nothing is impossible in here, even if it is inside of an idiot meat sack like you. It stated with an demeaning tone. This caused Naruto to gain an even larger angry vein on his forehead when he heard yet another remark on his intelligence. Oh, shut it. It's thanks to you that I barely got an education in the first place, since every single teacher I ever had, with the sole except of Iruka-sensei, ever taught me anything at all datbao. He remarked as he pointed at the demon fox. The QB merely scoffed to that, not even fazed by what was said. So, what do I have the pleasure of finally meeting my jailer? He then asked as he wanted to get straight to the point. Naruto meanwhile had finally calmed himself down as he then once more looked at the demon fox with narrow eyes. Like it or not, you're stuck in here with me and I won't be letting you out. He stated with conviction. In response, QB narrowed his own eyes to that response, clearly not liking what the blonde had just said. I see you are already maturing, you little brat. He remarked with a strangely calm yet angry tone. Naruto, however, was able to pick up the way the strange combination of tones and couldn't help but be confused as a result, but regardless of that, he decided not to think of it too much. After what happened with that bastard Mizuki, I told myself that I had to grow up. He began. So? QB asked, not even caring what his container had to say. Basically that means that I know that if I die, you die too. Naruto then explained. You want to live, then you gotta give me your chakra when I need it. He added while crossing his arms over his chest. The QB soon had a furious look on its face as he grinded his large fangs. He then tried to slam his huge claws between the cage bars, but Naruto was far enough for the claw not reach him, though it did give him a fright by the surprise attack that he fell on his behind as he looked at the very sharp claw only a few centimeters away from his head. I will give you nothing. The only reason I ever gave the last container any of my power was that they forced me to give it to them. Just like that big, it then started before stopping himself at a certain part before growling at his current container. When Naruto heard the sudden stop from the Kaibi's rant, he began to stand up again as he raised an eyebrow when he noticed that he cut off at a certain part. What was that? He then thought in confusion. The QB simply decided not to say any more and just continued to glare at Naruto. Anyways, I refuse to give any more of my chakra to an arrogant ant like you. The QB then added. This made Naruto looked at the most powerful of the 9 bijus with a startled and confused expression. After all, Naruto may had been called many things in his short life, such as demon, orphan, dead last, brat, wannabe Hokage and a prankster, but no one had ever told him that he was arrogant. Sure, he tended to act a bit stubborn with some things, but he was never arrogant as himself never liked being compared with anything to the proud duck butt, rookie of the year. Oi, I'm nothing like the Tem Datbao. He responded. QB just scoffed again, but only this time with disgust at his host. Then what do you call demanding something that is not yours? If that isn't arrogant, then what is? He then demanded the answer to his question. That instantly caused Naruto to shut up as he was now really gave some serious thought of what the most powerful Biju had just said. That's. He started, but trailed off as he couldn't find the words to denial what the demon fox just said. The shadows hid the QB's smirk as it looked at his container as he began to really think about what said, but more so that he was actually giving some thought to what he said, something no human had ever done before, not for a long, long time. You demand my power yet you have no rebuttal when someone talks back to you in a matter like this. Quote. He stated with its own arrogance in its voice. Why do you even want my power? Just to help you out to your desperate dream of being loved and cherished and not even caring about the being you took it from. It then began to ask as his face became serious and angry as well. That's arrogance and selfishness. They will never care for you that way. That will only create more fear and hatred towards you even more. He then declared with heated anger. Though the Kyuubi was insulting Naruto, said boy couldn't help but see some truth of what the Biju was trying to tell him. If he was being honest to himself, Naruto did wanted to use his chakra to help him fulfill his dream, but he never thought of it that way. If you're so smart then, what do you think I should do? He then asked with a huff as he crossed his arms once more. Though deep down, he really wanted to know what he should do, but he didn't want to give the Kyuubi the sense he was right about anything. Then he turned back towards him. But I'll never give up on my dream. He added with conviction as his eyes held undying determination as he would never abandon his lifelong dream. The Kyuubi finally calmed down when he heard the question, as he once more chuckled to the question as it already figured out what its container was thinking. Never said you shouldn't, brat. But to answer your question it really simple that even a nearly brain dead like you could understand. Quote. He began with a mocking tone, which only made said boy to gain multiple tick marks around his face for yet another remark at his intelligence, but before he could shout it out his anger, the demon fox continued. Find something that you want to truly protect. It then simply answered with a calm and complete seriousness tone, holding the boy from shouting. Something that you would die for, just for the sake of keep that one thing safe. It then added. This really surprised Naruto. He was expecting many things, like something along the lines of killing or destroying everything as that's what he always believed what the nine-tailed fox would try to convince him. But he really didn't expect such an honorable and humane reply to his truly serious question. To be honest I really didn't thought you would really give me a really good answer, let alone say something like that. He replied with a humble tone. The most powerful Biju looked at Naruto with a very calm and wise look in his enormous face. I am many things, brat. But it was your world's own history that made me a monster that everyone think I am. The Kyuubi then remarked. This made Naruto to really think over what he was taught he knew of the most power and evil Biju. Then he added that to what he just saw firsthand and he realized that the Kyuubi wasn't like thought he was. Sure he could just believe that he was just saying that to trick him, but the honest in the Kyuubi's voice made him doubt that notion. Then Naruto remembered what he was told to do so he could get the power of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. But I already have people I want to protect. Gigi, who was like my grandfather I never had, though I'm still be a little mad at him for not letting me about you, I still care for him. Uruka-sensei, since he was like the father I never had since my real ones died when I was born. And the Ichirakus who never saw me as anything else than a normal kid, there's already a lot of people that I want to protect Dadbayo. He then exclaimed the last bit while giving one of his true smiles, a simple soft smile that was filled with pure happiness. To that, the Kyuubi watched Naruto with its millennium-old eyes as he watched for any deception. When he found nothing but sincerity and honesty, he did something no one in a millennia had ever saw him do. He too smiled softly for the first time in his long life. Well then, he suddenly then started as his voice sounded much more calmer and with a hint of satisfaction in his tone. That's good enough for now, brat. I'll give you some of my chakra. He then simply declared. In response, the words didn't register in Naruto's head as he blinked a couple of times. He got out in confusion. This caused the Kyuubi to chuckle as he was expecting such a response, seemingly knowing that the blonde would react like that. See, this is why everyone calls you an idiot, you're really slow in the intake. He then taunted in good humor, which in turn caused Naruto to replace his confused expression to a furious one. I said, I'll let you have some of my chakra when you need it. But remember, there are consequences for using the power, such as, he then answered, but before he could say any more, his container started to yell in annoyance. Hold on, where the hell did this come from, Dadbayo? Naruto then exclaimed his question in complete and utter confusion as he pointed at the demon fox. I just heard you saying that you always fought with your last two containers and tried to escape. Now you actually give me some of your chakra. He asked as he was both suspicious and confused. The QB once just scoffed to that. As I've said, what I want is freedom, to do as I pleased. He stated with a very strange tone as well as with an equally strange chuckle. Naruto could have sworn that he heard the same strange chuckling from somewhere. But he took it as him trying to get out and finished what he started 12 years ago. Wait a minute, you just want to destroy Konoha, right? He then accused as he pointed at the demon. The QB just sighed in annoyance. Baka, if I actually wanted to do that, your village would have been destroyed before I was forced to fight that tree maker. Quote. It then explained his piece. Naruto could see the logic in that, but he could somehow feel that there was a very intense yet well-hidden hatred in its voice when the fox said, tree maker. However, your first Hokage had a different reason for his dislike for me when I was in the first person I was sealed in. It then added as it then started chuckling again. Wait a minute. Naruto then got out as he then listened closer to the chuckling that was heard, as he finally recognized it and where he had heard it before, it was from some of the men that were in front of magazine store while looking at the dirty magazines. As naive as Naruto was on certain things, he still managed to connect the dots, as his eyes widened from the realization. You're a pervert, aren't you? He shouted the accusation while pointing at the demon fox with a tick mark on his forehead. Then the most powerful and most dangerous creature in all the shinobi nations and probably the whole world did something Naruto never thought was possible. He began to laugh his off as he didn't refuse that accusation. That's when Naruto realized yet another very important fact. Oh good Kami, I have a pervert sealed inside of me. He got out as dread filled his very being. It was worth placing the influence for the idea for that sexy jutsu of yours in that little head. That and the already perverted villagers at the red light district that I accidentally destroyed. QB then stated with a smirk as he then looked at the expression of disbelief on his container's face. You really thought the idea for creating that jutsu just came from nothing, brat? He remarked the question and still smirking. Naruto's eye merely twitched as he watched the demon fox laughing in a perverse tone. Kami damn it Dadbayo. He got out, knowing that things were going to be interesting between the two from now on. Kai. The QB's crimson chakra soon began to radiate intense heat, so much so that even the clone's lips began to dry up, and they were still over 10 feet away from him. Naruto's physical characteristics soon began to change, his nails turned into sharp claws, his canines grew longer and sharper, his whisker marks turned thicker and darker shade. Finally, his eyes turned from cerulean blue to blood red color, as his pupils turned into fox-like slits. Naruto then turned to look at the clones with a feral look that could even scare grown man, as he swiped his hand through the air, causing a small shock wave to take out at least half of the shadow clones. One of the clones that had managed to survive the attack, he looked at the original with a shock expression. Crap, he's gone QB. That clone warned before he was immediately destroyed by Naruto as he dashed from his location at twice the normal speed and slammed his fist into the clone's face. But no sooner that happened all the other clones surrounded him. They each made different hand seal as fast as they could. Wind style. Air bullet. Half of the remaining clones as they send multiple air bullets, but by doing so they also disappeared from using their remaining chakra. Exploding shadow clone jutsu. The other clones called out as they ran right at front the QB power-up Naruto, causing a massive explosion around him. But what would surely mean death for any other ninja, it was nothing too life-threatening for the number one unpredictable knuckle-headed ninja of Konoha, as he did what many would call a reckless and suicidal move. He channeled a good portion of the QB's chakra into his throat as he crossed his arms, just as the bullets and the explosion were a few feet at him. Naruto had managed to gather enough chakra at his throat to unleash a massive beastly roar that blocked most of the attack. This caused an explosion to expanded and released a huge shock wave, tearing down the surrounding trees and making a small crater around where the blonde was last seen with a pillar of smoke rising. Naruto stood in the center of the crater as the smoke eventually cleared itself. His orange tracksuit was more than just a little torn, it was in near ruins, having many burned apart from the explosion. He knew he will need a new one after this. He wasn't much better, but the wounds were minor in comparison to what the damage could have been if he had took the full force of the attack, and thanks to the Kyuubi's chakra, the wounds were healing already. He would be at full strength again with a good long hour's rest. Well, that was intense. Naruto got out in a strained tone, no doubt from the exposure of the Kyuubi's chakra into his system as he waved his hand to blow out the smoke. From inside of the seal, Kyuubi only scoffed at that. No kidding, you idiot, that was both stupid and reckless. Now I'm all good with being stupid and reckless in a real fight, but not when you use my chakra. He commented. You know the consequences of using my chakra unless it's as a last-ditch option. He then added. Naruto merely sighed to that as he looked up and saw that it was already night, the full moon shining down over him. Flashback no jutsu. After the two settled down after the pervert issue, the Kyuubi looked at Naruto with a very serious look. Alright kid. Here's the thing about using my chakra. He began as Naruto for once stood there waiting to hear what he was about to say. It will give you a big power boost to all your natural abilities and jutsus, but the more and the longer you use it, the more it will burn your skin if you overuse it, but above all, any negative emotions can greatly affect you in the worst possible way and will most likely make you go berserk, which will make you attack enemy or ally alike. He explained. Any other questions, Kit? He then asked. Naruto took everything Kyuubi said to heart as he began to think of anything he could ask. After a moment or two, he finally thought of something. Just one, can I use it to train? Naruto asked. As long as you don't abuse it like the baka that you are, it should be okay for a few minutes, but only if you don't overuse it. Kyuubi remarked as his chakra then began to slither at Naruto. Another thing. You might get a small enhancement of your natural abilities as a result. He added. Wait, what? Naruto exclaimed, but couldn't say anything else as he was tangled by the red bubbling chakra. Oi, he then got out. Don't overreact to it, the demon fox ordered in a casual manner as he watched the events unfold. It's like I said, I'm just going to give you a small enhancement of things you already had, such as hearing, smell, sight, reaction time and a good healing factor. Though it can be increased its effect even more if you used of my chakra, but you still have to be careful or you could overload your sense and damage your body. The demon fox explained with his eyes closed while his container was being swallowed by the chakra. Kai. Naruto was still mad about the idiot bit, but he was sure not to overuse it, because he really didn't want to attack his allies and friend, but he really liked that slight boost of his regular abilities. Then after taking a deep breath and stretch a bit he figured he had done enough training today. Naruto started walking home. The cool night breeze felt good after hours of intense training, monstrous stamina or not. Unbeknownst to the Uzumaki, someone, whose face was covered to a mask was watching him as he left. Man, that gave me a scare. I thought I would had to get involved if he had gone berserk. The masked man commented with a relieved tone in his voice. Hokage-sama just had to give me this mission. He grumbled as he thought back to when his leader ordered him to watch over Naruto. Flashback no jutsu. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen had just summoned the masked man just after Naruto had left. Do you understand? You must watch over Naruto-kun until the time for the team placements. The third Hokage ordered. Sir, this is a tall demand. The masked man stated with some hesitation tone in his voice. It could be very dangerous for him to train with all the high-level jutsu he is trying to learn, it could let the Kyuubi's chakra out and it could result in him going berserk. He then elaborate. Hiruzen nodded to this in response. I understand what you mean, but that is the reason you will be watching him from the shadows. If it gets drastic or possibly dangerous, you will be there to calm it down with your power. He explained. I'm not questioning your decision and I'll fulfill it to the best of my abilities. It's just I'm worried if Naruto uses the Kyuubi's chakra, be it by choice or by accident, this early stage could result in him having to rely on it, which could be very dangerous, for both himself and those around him. The masked man explained his piece. Hiruzen merely chuckled in response to that. Naruto is a stubborn boy, he isn't someone who will want to completely rely on the Kyuubi's power. You may not have seen it yet, but he is someone who will actually work hard and always trains until the point of exhaustion. He soon started his explanation. With that said, the masked man just bowed deeply. Very well, Hokage-sama, I trust your judgment. He stated with complete calmness, knowing that he could trust the leader of the villages he then left to fulfill his mission. The old Kami no Shinobi just chuckled once more as he then walked towards his window and looked at Naruto heading to his apartment. Did you really think I wouldn't know that you got more than just the shadow clone from the scroll, Naruto-kun? He thought to himself with a smile on his face. He already knew that Naruto had taken more jutsus from the Forbidden Scroll, but since those jutsu were only dangerous to those with low chakra, he decided to let Naruto have them for his arsenal. After all, with his enormous amount of chakra he possessed, those jutsus will not be of any danger to him. I just hope that this is a good start for you to forgive me. He then added with a sad smile, as he knew that though Naruto did forgive him, the smile he gave before was one of those that he uses to those he tries to fool or to try to hide his resentment towards others. I will make this right, he said in a low but with determined voice, before remembering the stack of paperwork, causing him to groan in annoyance. Kai, and just like his leader had told him, the masked man did saw the pure determination and hard work Naruto displayed during his self-training. He was very impressed with the fact that he managed to, more or less, manage to execute those high-level jutsus after only a week of practicing them from early mornings to late at night nearly non-stop. Though he still has a long way to go before he can even use them properly and efficiently, he has a horrible chakra control. He thought to himself as he sweat-drop at the many times Naruto tried to use the jutsus only to blow up on his face, literally. He soon watched as Naruto was, though wobbling in each step, left after he put on a spare set of clothing he had brought with him. Well, I guess this mission is finished. Better go and report to Hokage-sama of Naruto's progress and that there wasn't any need for my involvement. The masked man concluded as he left to do just that via smokeless shushin. At the streets of the village, Konohagakure was eerily quiet at this time of the night, where if someone had dropped a senbon, it would have sounded like someone had dropped a metal pipe, but growing up in a ninja village since the day he was born made Naruto used to it. This was Naruto's usual way back home after his long training session, as it was both on his way back home and by Ichiraku Ramen too, wanting to get something to eat before he went to bed, only to find it had already closed for the night. Damn it, he said with a depressed tone at the close sign. Though Ichiraku had a habit of closing late, in order to better accommodate ninja who trained or arrive after a mission until late in the night and didn't feel like cooking, so for it to be closed meant Naruto had been training harder and later than usual. Naruto let out a big sigh. Guess it's cupped ramen tonight. Naruto got out as he continued walking to his apartment with slouched shoulders, but after a couple of blocks he started to smell something funny in the air. After what the Kyuubi told him about using his chakra, Naruto had finally starting to notice that his senses had indeed gotten a lot better than before, even if there were small residue from earlier use. So much so that he could now recognize a person just by the smell of them. This was the reason why Naruto had been training extremely hard since then, so that this wouldn't cause problems later on, wanting to train with the Kyuubi's chakra to get his body to adjust to the changes or risk having his senses go overloaded by their new sensitivity. And all while the Kyuubi's chakra was still flowing through him from the earlier use, his senses were, for the moment at least, sharper than even those of the Inuzuka clan. It took about a day for this effect to wear off and returning to normal, though that depends on how much of the Kyuubi's chakra he used and was still remain in his body. He had been training with the Kyuubi's chakra for only a week, but had learned a lot about his new sensing abilities. One thing he learned is that along with their own scents, every man and woman had a second scent, one more pungent to those able to smell it. It told him if it was a man or a woman. He still hadn't figured out how it worked, but he knew the two scents were definitely for a man and a woman. That's why the scent present to him was very confusing. That smells like Sasuke. But why is there a girl's scent mixed in? He pondered as his face suddenly turned from his confused to horrified. What if him and Sakura-chan? He soon exclaimed as he imagined the scene in his head, Sakura draped on top of Sasuke, their bodies only covered by a dark blue blanket in each other's arms. Imaginary Sakura's face was as red as a rose as she looked at her partner. Sasuke-kun, I love you, she gently whispered in a love-filled tone. Imaginary Sasuke's smirking face as he guides her face closer to his own. Hemp, of course you do, he said, as if it was something to be expected. Their faces come even closer until their lips almost meet. That's where Naruto shook his head, wanting to end the revolting scene before it went any farther. No frickin' way Datbayo, he declared. Determined to stop things before they even get started, Naruto followed the two scents and it led him to Sasuke's apartment. Bastard, he took her back to his place. Alright pal, that tears it. Naruto declared as he gathered some of his chakra to his feet to jump up and grabbed onto Sasuke's patio. Ever since the Uchiha massacre, Sasuke has stayed in an apartment the Hokage assigned to him as he didn't want to live where his family was murdered. It was located on the second floor of an apartment complex about 10 minutes away from Naruto's place. Sasuke had the same financial setup with the village as Naruto did since the massacre of the Uchiha clan, although Sasuke's apartment was a lot nicer and most if not all of his appliances were in perfect working order. The village supplied orphans like them with money every month to live off of until they graduated from the academy and could earn money from mission after a year. Naruto soon back-flipped into the air, doing a complete 360 as he landed on Sasuke's patio railing. While he stood on the railing, Naruto peered through the patio window, poking his head out from the side, trying to see what was happening. What he saw next was not what he expected. What the? Naruto whispered as he looked in. He definitely saw what looked like Sasuke, but something was off about him. He could only see his bare back, he had no shirt on at the moment, in fact the only clothes he seemed to be wearing were a pair of blue boxers, but they seemed to be shorter than what most guys he knew wore. He had an hourglass figure and his hair flowed down his back all the way to his butt and looked silky smooth, just as his skin did. Near the upper back area, Naruto could see there seemed to be some bandages bounding something but wasn't exactly sure what. That weird, but anyways, I don't see Sakura-chan in there at all. And how the hell did the Tem grow his hair out in such a short time? Naruto muttered out as he asked the question. In the seal meanwhile, the Kyuubi was laying down on the floor as he smirked at what Naruto was thinking, as he already figured it out what was going on. Looks like the kid is about to learn a really interesting little secret. He thought to himself as he decided to not interfere and let things play out. Naruto however shuddered before swallowing his pride and banged a fist on the door once. Damn it, why the hell am I even doing this? Grr, it's cause I have no idea if that bastard took Sakura-chan. He thought in a small fit of agitation. After a few moments, the door opens up revealing Sasuke in a sleeping kimono, but with something seeming a bit off seeing as how Naruto can smell the scent of a girl coming off him and that his hair was somehow short again, clearly contradicting the way he just saw him with his hair down. What do you want, Dobi? Sasuke then asked in annoyance, though he was strangely sweating as if he was really nervous about something. When Naruto saw the nervousness of Sasuke, he glared at him as he thought he was right about Sakura being here, then taking a deep breath and narrowing his eyes at Sasuke. Where's Sakura-chan? He began, getting straight to the point. Did you take her here? If you did, what did you do to her, Tem? He then questioned in a slightly rapid speed. Sasuke meanwhile raised an eyebrow to that before returning to his normal glare. Why in Kami's name would I bring that pink-haired dead weight to my home? Do I seem like the kind of person who takes pleasure in her loud unholy banshee voice? He growled out once more in annoyance, irritated by the questions. Naruto's eye twitched at the insult the Uchiha was give the girl he crushed on. Then why do I smell a strong scent of a girl here at your place? Either you're lying or something weird's going on here, Tem. He then yelled in anger before taking a few sniffs of air discreetly. From within the seal, the Kyuubi was using all of his willpower not to burst out in roaring laughter as he was enjoying this very entertaining show. In response to the declaration, Sasuke stared at Naruto in shock expression for a brief moment, before going back to a calm facade. I don't know what you are talking about, Dobi, but I haven't brought any girls in my apartment. If there were, I wouldn't be able to get a good night's sleep with their infuriating non-stop bellowing. So you better leave before I kick you out, he calmly stated before he gave one last glare at the blonde before turning around back to his home. Naruto huffed out and said while unconsciously drawing a bit of Kyuubi's chakra as his eyes briefly turned crimson before it turned back to normal. Fine, if you don't want to tell me I'll go to the Hokage, fellow Konoha shinobi or not, I will go to the old man since you could be hiding something dangerous or putting another fellow shinobi in danger. He countered in a serious manner. This sudden declaration made Sasuke made a complete halt, then when he turned around to face Naruto, his face turned to complete shock by both the sudden change of eye color, he then shook his head as he tightened his fist. Would the Dobi really run to the Hokage for this? That idiot wasn't supposed to find out like this, or at all. He thought in rising panic as he now was more terrified by the chance of his secret being found out than the animalist eyes on his former classmate. Naruto meanwhile was getting frustrated by the lack of reply from the black-haired genin that he was ready to blow a fuse. Hey, I'm talking to you, Tem. He roared as he have had enough from the Uchiha lack of a responded before he walked up and grabbed onto the frozen Sasuke's shoulder, forcing him to look at him while pulling off part of the kimono by accident, allowing Naruto to catch a glimpse of bandages around Sasuke's upper torso. He barely got out as he wondered if Sasuke had an injury or something. To this, Kyuubi merely smirked as he noticed the small detail about the Uchiha. This sudden action Sasuke to gain a flushed face as he quickly pulls his kimono back away from Naruto and glares heatedly at him while fixing the kimono to cover himself back up. What the hell is your problem, Dobi? Sasuke yelled out in anger although he was trying to hide a flushed expression. I can't believe he actually did that. That was too close for comfort. He thought with a very un-Sasuke-like tone. Listen, Dobi, if you don't get out of my home, I'll kick you out myself. He soon threatened as he was on his wits' end dealing with the blonde genin. This threat instantly made Naruto glare back at Sasuke, not feeling the least bit intimidated. Oh yeah, Tem, how about a little bet? We go somewhere else and we have a match, best 2 out of 3 wins. I win and you tell me why you have a strong female scent on you. You win and you can keep your secret. He then challenged the black hair Uchiha. What would happen if I say no to this whole thing, Dobi? Sasuke asked while thinking on the sudden change in demeanor of the blonde's way of thinking. Since when did the idiot can think things through so calmly? He thought as he was actually impressed by the way Naruto thought things through. Well, that's simple. You don't get a fighting chance to defend your secret and I go straight to Hokage Gigi. Naruto then revealed while crossing his arms. Sasuke's eyes widened to that since he and most of the village knew how close the blonde genin was to the Hokage as they see each other as grandson, grandfather and it would only take a few minutes to reach him. Crap, I can't let him go to the Hokage, they'll interrogate me if they learn about. Hopefully I can beat the idiot and keep my secret safe. I can't let anyone find out the truth. He thought as he looked up at his fellow genin and sighs heavily, making it seem like he is more annoyed than worried. Fine, Dobi, when I win you keep your mouth shut and get off my property, got it? He then replied as he was ready to fight with everything he's got to keep his secret hidden. Naruto smirked at his rival. Bring it on. He instantly replied, ready to fight, as he always wanted to have a rematch against him, and now that he was much stronger than all the years in the academy put together, he felt like he could stand a chance, beat him even. The QB meanwhile in the seal smirked as the two stared each other down. Well now, this is going to be interesting, he stated as he just knew this will be the best entertainment he has seen in a long time. At a private Uchiha training grounds, away from prying eyes, Sasuke was standing just a few feet from Naruto as said blonde was doing some stretches, wanting to be ready when the match start. So Dobi, what was that about? You could smell a female scent on me. I know for a fact that you're no Inuzuka. So what's the deal? He asked as that was what really bothering him. He was always careful to make sure not to leave any trails, so for him to detect something like a female scent was something he must know so that he could avoid in the future. Naruto, who was already done with his brief stretches, faltered a little by Sasuke's sudden question, as he didn't expect him to ask something like that of all things. The fact that he was actually talking to him as a normal person and not ignore him was another factor. I guess you can call it somewhat of an improved bloodline, Tem. I recently learned about it and asked the old man if he could explain what it did. Naruto vaguely said after trying to find the right words without giving anything away. You have a bloodline, Dobi. What exactly does it do besides your enhanced nose? Sasuke asked as he was honestly curious about this so-called bloodline and how he could actually smell a gender. Naruto just scoffed at the question. I don't think it's any of your business, Tem, seeing as how I don't go around ask you how your Sharingan works, now do I? Naruto countered question with a defensive tone as he had no intention about telling Sasuke about the Kyuubi enhancing his natural abilities. Besides, I don't trust you to actually give you ideas on how my bloodline works, he added. This immediately caused Sasuke to raise slightly his eyebrow, as he would had expected someone like Naruto to brag something about having a bloodline and not care for keeping his abilities secret. Fine with me, Dobi, I don't care anyways, Sasuke replied as he turned his head, but only slightly to hide his annoyance and his disappointment of not being able to find a way to block or hide his smell. Damn, something is definitely up with the idiot. But what? He thought out of rising curiosity. Are we going to start this match or not? Naruto then asked as his limited patience had finally ran out. Sasuke merely rolled his eyes to that question. Alright, Dobi, we can have our match here. This training field is far away enough from the civilian homes and no ambush should interrupt us since we both agree to this, so we shouldn't get interrupted, Sasuke explained as the two arrived to the same training field the Uchiha had used to use when he was younger. Then the Genins were finally ready to fight. Now to beat him and shut him up for good, he thought as he was desperate to do so. Before the start of the match, Naruto creates a shadow clone to stand off away from the fight to act as the proctor. This made Sasuke to gain a startled expression at the sight of the clone. He made a perfect clone. But how? I thought it was his worst jutsu, he thought to himself as he remembered always seeing Naruto creating horrible clones. Alright, ground rules are the following: aside from killing, anything goes and whoever forfeits or loses consciousness first loses the match. Got it, Tem, the Naruto clone said as the real one got into a fighting stance. Now to find out what's really going on around here, Sasuke, the real one thought to himself. How I waited for this chance to beat the Tem, he added as excitement was beginning to fill his being. Sasuke then recovered from his earlier startlement as he scoffed at the clone's rules before he then got into the Uchiha clan's stance. Just don't be complaining when I beat you into the ground like I always do, Dobi, he taunted with his normal indifferent tone. Right back at ya, Tem, Naruto shot back as he got into his brawler-like stance. I'm not going to lose that easily like before, not anyone, he then added as he began to send chakra throughout his body to increase his normal physical abilities. The clone looks at the both of them before raising his hand. Fighters ready, he started as he saw the determined expressions on both their faces. Begin, he soon declared as he then chopped his arm down quickly as the two fighters quickly shot at each other, both of them ready to deliver a punch. As the two closed in on each other, their punches connect with the other, creating a small shock wave, cancelled each other's attack and forcing them to jump apart. By this collision, both young genins shook their fist as they were slightly hurt by the impact. Once recovered, Sasuke groaned as he expected to end the match as soon as it began. Guess he wasn't bragging, he really did improve. It looks like I'm going to have to get serious. He thought to himself before he began to make some hand signs, ending the signs with the tiger seal. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Sasuke got out as his cheeks expanded and he blew out a medium-sized fireball towards Naruto. Oh crap. The Tem's seriously trying to killing me. Naruto thought in a panic when he saw the fireball coming at him. He quickly started his own hand signs. Earth style. Mud wall jutsu. He declared as a wall of mud shot up from the ground. The unique thing about this wall of mud was that it has a swirl-like symbol on the front of the wall, very similar to the ones on the Konoha shinobi vests Chunin and Jonin had. Another event that had also happened after the Mizuki incident was that the third Hokage decided though he would let Naruto learn all the offensive jutsu that he got from the scroll, he thought that he should give a more defensive jutsu to the young Jinchuriki in the hopes of help him in the near future, and as the jutsu-loving genin that Naruto was, he was more than happy when he was given a new jutsu like a child was given a new toy. Though unlike his wind style, it took him a lot longer to get a hang of it, but he still made some process, making him believe that he had earth as a second element. Awesome. It worked. Naruto shouted with excitement as the jutsu finally worked. What? Sasuke thought in shock as he saw a wall of mud rise up from the ground, completely blocking Naruto from his fireball. When the hell did he learn that? He asked himself as he then gritted his teeth in frustration. This match might have just gotten more complicated than I originally thought. He then admitted in his head as he now saw that Naruto was much stronger and capable than before the Genin exams. Soon after, Naruto used the cover to create another shadow clone, then he and the new clone jumped over the mud wall as they had just finished making some hand signs. Wind style. Air bullet. Both of them called out in unison as a small barrage of air bullets shot towards Sasuke with the intent on doing a decent amount of damage before the clone soon dispersed itself from the overuse of the wind jutsu. Crap! Sasuke exclaimed as he quickly used a substitution jutsu to safely get away from the oncoming attack, then he looked back and saw the log that he substituted with completely destroyed. How did he get this strong? Was he hiding his true power during our academy years? If so, then why? He thought as he hid behind a training log to catch his breath. Hey Sasuke, if you're wondering why I'm much stronger now, Naruto started, freaking Sasuke out as he thought that the blonde had just read his mind. I decided to take things seriously now. I'm not the same kid from our academy days that everyone looked down as the worst dead last. He declared. Sasuke grunted as he heard this declaration and moved away from the training log. And Naruto could see a different look on the last Uchiha's face. It wasn't the same face of indifference, but of one that just screams he didn't want to lose. Seriously or not, I'm still gonna kick your. He yelled in a tone unlike himself as he started gaining distance. In response to the declare, Naruto was briefly shocked by the way Sasuke said that. The hell? When did Mr. Calm, Cool and Emo get this type of personality? He thought in confusion. Inside of the seal, the QB was desperately trying not to laugh as he was enjoying this match. He could practically see where this was heading. Sasuke meanwhile didn't even realize that he had changed his demeanor as he narrowed his eyes at the blonde. Alright, so this version of the blonde idiot is a bit more of a powerhouse now, I gotta be careful. He thought to himself as he was now ready to fight with everything he's got. Where is he? Naruto muttered to himself, scouting the area around him, his body tense with anticipation. Where's the Tem? He asked himself, as he soon sent another small amount of chakra to his ears to enhance his hearing. This made him heard a sudden whirl in the wind before he quickly took out a kunai and deflected some shuriken that were headed from his blind spot. There! He then shouted as he threw the kunai in the direction the shurikens were thrown. At once Naruto heard a soft thud and assumed he hit his mark only to see that it was a log that he hit. What the hell? He got out, annoyed that he fell for that. Sasuke meanwhile didn't miss this chance of the blonde's startlement as he dashed as fast as he could at Naruto. Hiya! He yelled out in a slightly high-pitched tone as he reached his opponent from behind and roundhouse kicked him into some trees and bushes. Gotcha now, he declared in triumph tone, thinking he finally won. Naruto however quickly flipped on his hands to readjust himself and landed on his feet, he then quickly turning around and watching the Tem with his smug look. Lucky shot. He cracked his neck quickly as he once again enhanced his speed again and dashed at even faster speeds that caught Sasuke off guard. Then Naruto delivered a strong punch to his opponent's gut that made him cough out some saliva from the impact and was sent skidding backwards. And that payback, he soon remarked. Sasuke slowly began to regain his balance as he gasped in pain and coughed up more saliva. How did he? He managed to get out to himself before he then felt cold metal press against his neck. Give up, Tem, I got you this round. Naruto said in a serious manner as he had maneuvered himself behind Sasuke and placed a kunai against the base of his neck, as a sign of instant death if it was a real fight. This made Sasuke grind his teeth in frustration. Damn, he soon got out, knowing that he lost the first round and that if Naruto wins one more his secret is as good as gone. He's this strong, he thought, enraged at the idea of someone like Naruto beating him in a fight. Lucky win. He then unintentionally got out. Luck had nothing to do with it. Naruto said with a small grin as he removed the kunai from Sasuke's neck and placed it back in his holster. I've just learned some crazy truths about myself and then trained to improve myself because of that. He explained, half regretting some of the stuff he learned as his hand unintentionally went to his stomach where his seal was. He then turned to stare at Sasuke and gave a slight confused look. What's up with him? He thought as he remembered how he was acting earlier. Sasuke meanwhile wanted to question what he meant, but knew that the blonde probably wouldn't answer anyway. Fine, then get ready for round 2. He then responded. Naruto then jumped back to create a fair amount of space between him and Sasuke before taking out some shurikens on each hand. Then bring it, Tem, he roared as he then threw them at his rival. Sasuke couldn't help but smirk at what had been happening. Gladly, he responded as he quickly took out his own shurikens and threw them. The flying stars deflect the ones that Naruto threw. As both barrages of shurikens bounced off each other, the two rushed at each other again, determined to win for their own specific reasons, but now both sharing the exact same thought. I'm winning this fight. The both thought in harmony as they both cocked back their fists and then delivered a cross punch to each other's face. When the attacks met each other's cheeks, they both flew in the opposite direction with Naruto slamming against a tree causing his to gasp in pain and Sasuke falling into some thorn bushes near the Uchiha Gardens. Okay, that one hurt. Naruto got out as he rubbed his back from its soreness from the impact of the tree, while he struggled to get to his feet. Though he had a good healing factor, he could still feel the lingering effects of impact pain. Damn it. Again. Sasuke muttered to himself as he was once again sent flying by the blonde as he struggled to get out of the bushes, not realizing that some parts of his clothes got torn from the thorns. Sasuke soon saw that Naruto was still down and quickly took out some ninja wire from his pouch and rushed towards the dobe, unknowingly that a thorny twig was stuck on the tear on his clothes, so when he moved hastily the tear grew even bigger, showing more of his figure. Sasuke then wrapped the wire around Naruto's neck, tightening it slightly only as a threat to cut off his head if he pulled on it more. Give up, he taunted with a very un-Sasuke-like tone. Naruto, who was too shocked about the wire around his neck to notice the tone, then when he saw Sasuke's smirk, he finally snapped out of his daze. Fine, I surrender, Tem, this time. He got out with a groan as he felt Sasuke releasing the wires around his neck as the Uchiha placed it back inside of his pouch. Damn, I can't believe I lost focus like that, he thought to himself before looking at Sasuke, who was walking away to get some distance for their last round, as he now was noticing his waistline as it was clearly curved inward. Okay, something is definitely off about him, he thought as he was now really confused. By this point, QB was in actual pain from holding back his roaring laughter at how dense and stupid his container was to the point where he couldn't even speak. Time to end this, Naruto, Sasuke declared as he got into his clan's stance for the final time, not even realizing that he just called him by his name. Bring it, Sasuke. You got me last time, but I won't fall for it again, Dadbayo, Naruto said, getting into his stance again, as he too didn't realize he called him by his actual name. The two stare intensely at each other as you could cut the tension with a knife. They both didn't even care about the bet anymore, they just wanted to win this fight as they finally were serious and will go at it with everything they got. Naruto soon made the first move as he created some clones to distract the Uchiha while he quickly took out a kunai and began to slash each clone with a fluidity and grace that the clones didn't so much as land a single hit. He then pulled out his ninja wire once more and caught one of the clones, then he pulled the captured clone and sent him straight to another group, instantly dispelling them. Naruto saw that though he and his clones were stronger, Sasuke on the other hand was clearly faster and had more grays in his moments that made numbers useless. Damn. How the hell I'm going to hit him? I thought that my air bullet would be fast enough. Quote. He thought to himself as he began to think of what he should do, then he got an idea. He nodded to himself as he began to make new hand signs, completely different from his air bullet jutsu. I hope this works. Please don't shred my hand. Again, he begged to Kami as he finished going through the signs, landing on the dog sign. Then wind began to gather around his fist as a rapid velocity. Wind style. Beast wave palm. He soon declared as his wind chakra on his right hand took form of a claw made of pure wind before he swiped his hand in a vertical slash towards Sasuke. This created a shockwave of razor-sharp air slash right after the Uchiha. Yes, he shouted with glee at the jutsu working. In the seal, the QB started to calm himself down at the declaration of the jutsu. So he's finally able to use it now. Not bad. He got out with a smirk, already knowing the aftereffects of it. Unlike the air bullet that he learned from the scroll or the earth wall that was given to him by the Hokage, the beast wave palm jutsu was actually given by the QB as a sign of good fate, as it was probably 3 times more powerful but also just as hard or even harder than learning the air bullet, as one small error may cause massive cuts or gashes in his arms. When he failed to do it made it more apparent, though making him luck that he had the QB's chakra for healing the wounds. Sasuke however could only look on in pure shock at the powerful B, possibly bordering on a rank jutsu that was heading at his at speeds much greater than he could move, so he knew he couldn't let said powerful wind jutsu to hit him. If that thing hit, I'm dead, he thought with a panic as he figured that his fireball jutsu wouldn't be able to block it, let alone had time to perform it. So all he could do was send chakra to his legs and jumped back as far as possible and tried to use the many trees as an improvised shields. The powerful wind jutsu destroyed many trees. This managed to take most of the damage of the jutsu, but some of the remaining razor wind attacks still managed to reach him. Sasuke used his hands to cover his torso and face, though luck was on his side as the wind only hit his already torn shirt. Damn, I wasn't expecting that. Now I'll have to, he started muttering after feeling the jutsu dying down, but what the? Sasuke then heard the Uzumaki shouted before uncovering his face and soon noticing him slack-jawed in shock and disbelief with a massive blush starting to appear on his face. Oh okay. What the hell is this, Dadbayo? He then exclaimed in utter confusion. Sasuke got in as he looked at the Uzumaki. What's up with him? It looks like He barely got out just before he then felt a draft coming from his chest and could feel the tickling of long silky hair against his back. This made him widen his eyes in pure terror at what this could only mean. Oh no, he fearfully muttered, pale-faced as he slowly moved his head downward, confirming his fears as he saw that his upper body was completely exposed with 2 mounds of flesh on his chest were free, while also not noticing that his face started shifting slightly into a more cuter baby-like face as it then went crimson red instantly at what happened. How? He thought in a more meek tone as he could only stare at the freed large mounds of flesh. This was the straw that broke the camel's back, as the QB was now roaring with uncontrollable laughter of this whole insane situation. I can't believe it took a jutsu I gave the kid to find out about his so-called rival. And she's stacked of all things. He then declared between his roaring laughter as he then continued to laugh madly. Naruto, however, was still in a state of shock to even process what the Biju just said, as all he could do was stand there gaping like a fish at the sight. Before then he quickly turned away with a massive blush on his face, as he then realized that he was staring at a very intimate part of a female's body, so not wanting to look like a pervert, he quickly took off his jacket. Oi, Tem, he called out as he tried to sound composed, but failing miserably at it. In Sasuke's head, he, or should I say she, was panicking as she knew Naruto saw everything that she had hid for almost all her life. What d Dobi? She asked nervously as she tried to sound like normal, but it sounded more feminine as a result before looking up to see his head turned and presenting his jacket. She got out in confusion at the sight of the orange jacket. Here, put this on before you catch a cold, would you? Naruto then requested as he turned his crimson red head away to keep Sasuke's modesty intact, well as best as he could, that is. Though still very embarrassed and confused, Sasuke just nodded as she took the jacket as she quickly got it on to cover her ample chest that she was secretly proud of, but also hated it at the same time as it really made it difficult for keeping her gender a secret. Thank you, she meekly responded in a young girl tone, completely forgetting to keep up her male persona. Naruto then looked towards the Uchiha after hearing the sound of a zipper and saw that he, or rather she, now had the jacket on, as it made her bust actually looked even bigger. Even though she was only 12 like himself, she was in fact very well developed, which he blushed at before he then carefully placed his hand on her own and gently led her back to her apartment. Let's get you back home, he soon decided. Sasuke could only nodded in response as her head was more or less brain dead from all that happened. Alright, I'll explain everything there, she said monotonously as she let Naruto lead the way, though she didn't realize that she was staring at their joined hands with a small blush on her face. The two genin then began to walk back to Sasuke's apartment in a quiet yet somehow comforting silence. Near Sasuke's apartment, the two genins were now just around the corner of Sasuke's home, as she had her head low while Naruto was still leading her by the hand. Now what do I do? She thought as she looked at Naruto's calm face before she looked away. He saw everything, she muttered in a feminine and slightly fearful tone, as she was too embarrassed to keep on looking at him. And now he'll tell the Hokage. And then they will know too. She soon added in her head with even more fear as she then looked at the Uzumaki, only for hers and Naruto's eyes to meet. This caused the two of them to blush red as they then looked away with embarrassment. Naruto in response scratched his cheek from embarrassment. Then the two had finally reached Sasuke's apartment. He then opened the door to her apartment and led her inside. Once inside, he then led her to the nearest couch. How about you get properly dressed now? He then requested as he wanted to kick himself for the lack of tact. Way to go taking charge, QB sarcastically commented with a chuckle. Naruto, however, was still too embarrassed to even process what he said as he trying looking at anything but the last Uchiha, but his eyes couldn't help but just stare back at her. This comment from the blonde made Sasuke's blush even more red as she looked at him. She then crossed her arms over her chest as if to try and hide them, before remembering that she was using Naruto's jacket to cover up, which she felt embarrassed of using a boy's clothing to hide her female pride. She then quickly ran towards her room to grab a new shirt. Why did this happen? she muttered with an embarrassed tone while also feeling that having the blonde genin seeing her upper torso was more important than the fact her secret was revealed to said blonde. He's going to want to know. She got out. Eventually, when she finally found something to wear, she took off Naruto's jacket and placed it on her bed, which also caused her to bounce at the movements, causing her to blush at the sight before she then swiftly got a bra that she normally only used inside of her home and then put on a normal light blue shirt. Once now fully dressed, she headed back to the living room where Naruto was waiting for her. Once she finally returned back to the living room, she saw that Naruto was sitting on her sofa. Then after she took a deep breath and gathering her courage, she then sat down on the same sofa as well, though on the other end, as she stared at her feet while trying to come with some way to get herself out of this mess without involving Naruto in her life. Soon after about 30 or so minutes of staring at each other awkwardly, Naruto decided to break the ice. "So, Sasuke," he soon began. Sasuke cocked one eyebrow, secretly nervous about what the blonde would say. Naruto felt awkward, but he knew he had to set things straight. "Sasuke." He repeated the name, knowing that this was really going to be awkward for him, as for some reason he didn't understand wanted to be considerate at the person in front of him. "So, you're a girl, huh?" he bluntly asked before mentally kicking himself again. "Smooth one, Kit. Smooth one." QB deadpanned from the seal after calming himself down from the laughing he did earlier. This made Naruto groan in embarrassment as he felt like an idiot as he realized how inconsiderate that was. Sasuke couldn't hide her shock, fully knowing that Naruto got a good look at her during the spar. "Why yeah, so what Doby?" she retorted, trying to sound like his male persona as an attempt to hide her nervousness, but she failed very badly as it sounded like a cute girl trying to sound like a grown man. In response, Naruto stood up while looking Sasuke in the eye. He really wanted to lift this really heavy atmosphere. He then began to think of what he could possibly say to lighten it. Suddenly a mischievous smile spread across his lips as an idea popped inside of his head. "You know, you've got a really great figure, plus an actual set of that any girl would kill for," he openly said, trying to lighten the mood with some humor, but unfortunately it was possibly the worst thing to say to a girl, though he didn't deny what he said was true. "Give you an A for effort, but AF for performance, also double D's, Kit," the QB then stated as he was referring to a certain area of the girl. "Double D's," he repeated in a perverse tone. "Shut it," Naruto roared back inside of his mind. Sasuke on the other hand was taken by surprise by the compliment, instantly blushing bright red before looking away from him. Thanks. I think. She honestly got out as she didn't know what to think since she had never once been complimented by her female appearance, because if she had, she would have taken that as harassment. "That's never happened before," she admitted in her head. Regardless, to her, it was very confusing to receive such compliments for her female charms, but strangely enough, she began to felt something warm in her chest thanks to the Uzumaki's compliment. It was something that she had never felt before, but for some reason it felt right to have someone, even if it was Naruto complimenting her on something other than how she was as the last Uchiha or the Rookie of the Year. "What is this feeling? What is it that makes me feel as if I need to be close to Naruto-kun of all people?" she thought, confused at what was happening to her, not even realizing that she subconsciously added kun to his name. Sasuke. Naruto got out after an awkward moment of silence between the two. Is that even her real name? He thought out of honest curiosity. As if reading his mind, Sasuke was slightly twiddling her thumbs as she was thinking of how to reply. It's Satsuki, she soon corrected in a quiet tone as her face became one of fear and anxious. "And, please don't tell anyone about this, please." Sasuke, now named Satsuki, muttered her plea as tears began to run down her eyes, surprising the blonde at what she was doing. Naruto could stare at the girl next of him with disbelief on his face. He just couldn't believe what he just heard. What the hell Datbayo? He thought in complete confusion by this turn of events. Sasuke, or rather Satsuki Uchiha was pleading, no begging him to keep her true gender a secret. This definitely wasn't the same person he thought he knew throughout his entire academy years, this wasn't the emo, unsociable and arrogant boy he always hated. Something inside of him didn't like seeing this pure and innocent-looking girl begging for anything, so Naruto nodded his head in response to the question. Okay. But is it okay if you could just explain what this is about and what's going? I mean, this is pretty serious Datbayo. He then requested in a serious tone. To this, Satsuki felt somewhat relieved by his answer, though she still didn't know how to explain everything. She got out, still unsure of what to do. Naruto could see that the girl was really conflicted by whether or not tell him anything, so he placed his hands on top of hers and gave her a gentle squeeze. You don't have to if you don't want to, everyone's got their own personal problems. He then stated in a calm tone. Satsuki blushed a bright pink color at the sudden contact, but she didn't dislike seeing the blushing L quickly let go of her and began to wave his hands rapidly as he began to apologize for the action as Satsuki couldn't help but silently giggle at the blonde's flustered face. Then after a few minutes, the Uchiha then took a deep breath to calm herself down. Alright, she replied in a shaky tone, still feeling nervous about having to reveal her deepest, darkest and most guarded secret that she has kept for many years. No, more like she was forced to hide for her own safety to the most unexpected person she had ever known as she began twiddling her fingers again. Naruto began to scratch the back of his head as he was trying to find the right words to ask. So. How long have you been you know? He then finally asked. Smooth one Kit. Smooth one. Kyuubi said again with deadpan tone. Naruto didn't even try to retort to that as even he realized that it was a stupid question he started asking. A girl, Satsuki answered as she looked and watched the blonde nod his head. I've always been a girl. But the truth is that I kept my gender a secret for quite a while, it was to protect myself. She started explaining. In response, Naruto raised an eyebrow to that, not expecting that. Protect yourself. Protect yourself from what? He soon asked. Satsuki soon began to tremble at the thought of the very thing that had haunted her dreams as she held herself to stop the trembling. The Clan Restoration Act. She got out, as she began to shiver at the mere name of the act before continuing. It said in that disgusting act was made so that the last male of any clan or bloodline must take many wives to produce many descendants to make sure that the clan or bloodline doesn't go extinct. But, it's completely different if the last one is a female. Quote. She began to explain as the Uzumaki could see the terror in her eyes. If I'm that last female of my clan, I am forbidden to ever live the village or to be exposed to any dangers until I have given birth to a good solid number of children. She began to explain the act as her body began to shake. But that just means that they would turn me into nothing more than a breeding stock, to always be caged like cattle and I'll never be able to fall in love. She soon revealed as tears started running down her eyes as they stained her clothes and continued to tremble uncontrollably. I don't want that, she blurted out, more tears running down her eyes while falling sideways on the sofa while still holding herself even tighter. I'll never see the light of day again if that happen. The civilian council is already hounding me with girls thinking I'm a boy and hope to have with them to revive the Uchiha clan. I just want to be free. To be able to find someone who would like me, cares for me, even loves me just for being me. She finally admitted, not even trying to hold the tears back anymore. I just want to be a normal girl and a proud kunoichi. She declared with more tears leaking from her eyes. To this revelation, Naruto was completely stupefied by what he just heard as he couldn't even begin to even imagine what these poor girl must be feeling. True, he had felt pain and loneliness of being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, but this was something he as a male could never even begin to imagine her pain and fear. Okay. I'll be leaving now, you're on your own when it comes to the ladies. Kyubi stated with a joking manner, though Naruto could hear that he was serious as well. Then the Biju cut their connection to leave him on his own. Satsuki-chan. Naruto soon got out as he looked at the girl in front of him. Part of him was telling him that he must do something, no. His sense of justice demanded him to do something to help the innocent girl in front of him as he finally saw just how much different Satsuki was in comparison to Sasuke before he smiled at her with a one of his true smiles as he could. No, he will do for this poor terrified girl. Don't worry, I won't tell Soul. Hell, I'll even help you keep your secret, Dadbao. He soon declared as he looked at the crying girl while he gave the girl an undying determined expression on his face. Satsuki in response quickly brought herself up when she heard that, surprised at what Naruto just declared with passion. Though her eyes still had tears, they were now filled with hope by said blonde's declaration. Really? Why, you really mean it? She got out with a shocked tone at the willingness of the blonde-haired genin to protect her, but she then remembered what Naruto told her. But what about what you said about going to Hokage-sama? She then asked with slight fear of the boy actually going through with that. This caused Naruto to flinch as he remembered how this whole mess even began. He then rubbed the back of his head again. I only said that because I believed that your secret could have jeopardized the old man in some way, shape or form. He's pretty much like family to me, and of course I'll keep your secret. No one should have to go through what you're going through. I give you my word and I always keep my word no matter what, that's my ninja way. He calmly reassured so she could see in his eyes that he was indeed telling the truth. Satsuki in response to this passionate declaration, had her brain shut down for a moment, but she soon recovered as she did something the Sasuke Uchiha everyone knew would never do. She jumped at him with arms wide open and hugged him tightly as if she could, not wanting to let him go. Thank you Naruto-kun. This means so much to me. She gleefully said as she hugged the boy as she cried with happiness, which said boy was completely stupefied by the sudden action and personality change. I can't believe this. He actually wants to help me. Me of all people, she thought in excitement at this revelation. After a couple of minutes she finally calmed down, as Satsuki was still hugging him but now more softly. Hey, Naruto-kun, she then whispered softly, feeling secure from feeling the warmth that she was receiving from the blonde. On Naruto's side, however, it was his turn to have his brain to shut down for those few minutes, but it then restarted when he heard the female Uchiha calling him. Why yeah, Satsuki-chan, he responded softly as if trying to give her reassurance about whatever she is going to ask. As he unconsciously began to gently rub her back to calm her down. This action did its intention as Satsuki began to calm down even more. She then took a deep breath and began to gather her courage to ask a question she had wanted to ask for so many years to someone, anyone, but was unable to from her fear of having her secret revealed. Could I be your friend? She finally managed to ask as she blushed shyly, looking up at Naruto through her eyelashes. I really don't have any real friends since no one knows about me and anyone who wants to be friends only wants it because of my name and clan status, so I can get pretty lonely. She softly and depressingly explained in complete honesty as she kept holding the male while looking at him. To this, Naruto was yet again surprised by the girl's actions and words that he could only watch her for a moment. He had seen girls as either pretty or nice, but he had never seen such as a beautiful girl as Satsuki, nor had he felt such a beautiful girl hug him or even ask him, the Kyubi brat, to be friends, as he had a full face blush that could rival that of certain shy Hyuga. A part of him also felt sad for Satsuki, knowing what's it like to not have any friends and knew the pain of that is called loneliness. He then scratched the back of his head as he then took a deep breath and then looked straight at the Uchiha's eyes. Sure. I would love to be friends with you, Satsuki-chan. He responded as he smiled widely. In response, Satsuki gained stars of pure happiness in her eyes to the answer. Thank you, Satsuki shouted in a very girlish tone that was filled with pure joy as he hugged Naruto's arm. "Oh Kami, this means so much to me," Satsuki exclaimed once more. "I finally have a friend," she added in a glee-filled tone. This caused Naruto to begin babbling like an idiot as he could feel a pair of soft against his arm. No PP problem," he added nervously with a blush before he then calmed down when he realized something. "You know something?" he then started. "Yes, Naruto-kun," Satsuki asked as she continued cuddling his arm, looking dreamily at him as her onyx eyes sparkled. Even if they were slightly red from her crying a moment ago, she could only feel happy at the moment for making her first real friend. "Cute." Naruto got out as he couldn't help but think that the girl holding onto his arm was extremely cute, not just her face but her personality too. "You're completely different than Sasuke. It's like you pulled a complete 180 and you're a completely different person," he then stated. Satsuki in turn gained a depressed look on her face from the statement, making the blonde regret what he said, although he was still curious about her sudden change in mood. "Well, you see, I had to, or else people would think I'm weird," she got out as she subconsciously tightened her hold on boy's arm. Naruto was too busy thinking about what the girl just said to even realize what she just did. "What do you mean?" he asked, as he was really confused by her statement. "What's wrong with you acting the way you are now?" he then added. In response to that response, Satsuki loosened her hug on the blonde just a bit, as she tilted her head down. "I'm supposed to be Sasuke Uchiha, the Rookie of the Year, loved by the entire village for being an Uchiha, and the last hope for its revival," she began explaining with much sarcasm in her tone as she slid her arms down off of the blonde's. "If I began to act like a girl, it would make people speak badly about the Uchiha," she revealed. "I had to put up the best boy facade I could think of. I just didn't want them all to speak badly about my family," she soon admitted as she placed her hands on her own lap and looked down at the floor in sadness. This time it was Naruto who became depressed as he could understand, but at the same time he could never understand her feelings. He looked towards the ground, not able to face Satsuki. "Yeah, I get it," he started as the Uchiha looked at him with a confused expression. "Well, I get the idea anyway. I never knew who my family, but I have some people that I could more or less see as a family, so I can only guess how you feel," he explained in his own depressed tone. Satsuki's jaw almost dropped to that as she looked back at him with a shocked expression on her face. He didn't even know who his family was. In class he was always so loud and cheerful, and yet, she thought as she continued looking at him before remembering that he was an orphan like her. "Naruto-kun," she then muttered out as she held said boy's arm again and tightened her hold on it once more. Normally it would have gone unnoticed by the blonde, but with his enhanced hearing he heard it loud and clear. Naruto looked at the girl that was holding him. He was about to ask her what she wanted, only to be stopped by her sad onyx eyes that were spilling more tears. Naruto couldn't say anything. He was too mesmerized by the sad beauty holding onto him as if she would disappear if he let go for even a moment. "I'm so sorry," Satsuki soon blurted out as she hugged the boy's arm even tighter than ever before. Naruto's cerulean blue eyes widened in shock by this. What was she apologizing for? She hadn't done anything. If anything, I should have been the one apologizing, he thought in confusion as he continued looking at the sad hugging girl. "Satsuki-chan, what?" he barely got out in complete confusion. I'm so sorry, I've done nothing but complain even though I knew my family. I shouldn't. Satsuki's muttered words were stopped by the blonde, who lifted her chin up with his free hand, making her look him in the eyes. She got out. Naruto, however, just smiled at her with a kind and understanding expression. "It's alright, I don't really care about it," he simply responded. He didn't care. He didn't care about not having a family. How could he? Satsuki thought, shocked at this revelation, but she decided to let him continue wanting to know the full reason why he didn't care. Naruto scratched his head in response as he could tell what the girls was probably thinking. "It's not exactly that I don't care, it's just I don't know what a parent's love is," so I can't really be sad about not having it. Though I do have a notion of it because of my relationship with Gigi, Iruka-sensei and the Ichirakus. He explained before rubbing the Uchiha's head. So it's alright. Go ahead and cry, Satsuki-chan. You can just be you now, even if it is for a few moments. He then offered, giving a soft smile. Naruto-kun. Satsuki muttered as her eyes widened, filling with even more tears than before as she began to openly cry into his chest while said boy continued rubbing her head. She cried not just for her own sake, but she cried for all the tears that Naruto should have shed as well. Naruto couldn't help but wonder everything he thought he knew of himself and the girl in his arms. How had the two been enemies for so long? They were supposed to hate each other. That's how it's been since they met, and that's what he thought should had been. And yet here she was, the Satsuki Uchiha, burying her head into Naruto Uzumaki, the class clown's chest. Crying her eyes out from all her pain, and he could tell that she was crying for him as well as she continued sobbing into his jacket while he gently held her, whispering calm words to help her settle down. Naruto then decided to get up and bring her to her bedroom to try and help her go to sleep for the night. He couldn't get over how frail she felt. He was worried if he held her any tighter, she would break as a result. This was what his rival was really like. The ice-cold Sasuke was actually the sweet girl Satsuki Uchiha, who only wanted nothing more than to make her family happy, even if they weren't with her anymore. She was probably in some ways hurting a lot more than even he was. He continued to walk towards her room, holding her as she continued cuddling into his chest. Naruto-kun. The Uchiha then mumbled out as she was slowly beginning to fall asleep from both exhaustion and everything she had felt, the fears and secrets that she had locked away from everyone and from all the tears she finally shedded. Suddenly, Naruto was brought back to earth as Satsuki began to speak, her face still buried in his chest, knowing that she finished crying and was ready to sleep. Ah, yes. What's up, Satsuki-chan? He soon responded. Satsuki was fighting the sleeping spell from taking hold of her as she hesitant to talk for a moment before gathering the courage to ask. Would you mind if I be a little more selfish? She then asked. Naruto tilted his head slightly as he was confused at this. What do you mean more selfish, Satsuki-chan? He questioned. Satsuki tightened her grip on the blonde's jacket as he walked towards her bedroom, still feeling slightly nervous. Maybe it was the sleeping spell or just the tiredness, but she really didn't want to think of what she would ask meant anything. But she still had to ask it. Would you mind spending the night? She requested as her entire body tensed up as she finished her question. Naruto started, but was still shocked. Does she really want me to spend the night? He thought. Satsuki-chan. He got out, but could tell she wasn't lying, and he also knew he couldn't say no while she was like this. Say yes. The Kyuubi suddenly roared with a perverted tone. I thought you said you wouldn't interfere. Naruto roared in his mind as he really wanted to strangle him, but thanks to it, he managed to calm down his nervousness as he nodded his head. He didn't know if that was intentional or not, but he was glad anyway, though he would never admit it. Sure. But are you sure you really want me to? I mean, we're kinda alone here, so. He hesitated at the last part, feeling slightly embarrassed. In response to the question, Satsuki giggled softly, which surprised the blonde as she nuzzled her head onto his chest as gave a small yet beautiful smile. Don't worry, I trust you, Naruto-kun. She honestly responded in happiness as her eyes were now beginning to close. Please, I don't want to be alone for this night. She added as she grabbed his shirt. Naruto for the most part couldn't help but think that the almost sleeping girl in his arms could be any more cuter than this as he blushed more this entire night than he has his entire life. He honestly couldn't help but think that the female Uchiha was adorable when she was showing off her true colors. Why yup. Real swap in personality. He then admitted in a mutter. As tired as Satsuki was, she couldn't help but nod from what the blonde just said. Yup. I'm really good at acting. She ended with another giggle. I can tell. Naruto got out as he looked away, not wanting her to see him blush as the two arrived at the girl's room. So, where should I sleep? He asked as he sat down on the side of the bed. Satsuki's head began to tilt to the side in a sleeping fashion. Here's fine, she responded as she once again rested her body against the blonde's, using his chest like a pillow. Not knowing what to do, Naruto just looked down at the Uchiha as she nuzzled into his chest. Her eyes were now complete closed and she had the small smile that would make any man fall in love to this incredibly cute yet beautiful girl that was sleeping soundly in his chest. Damn, Naruto muttered as he looked at her, but not in a hate-filled way like he originally did with Sasuke. He just couldn't feel any negativity towards Satsuki. Don't you worry, Satsuki-chan, you don't ever have to worry about anything now that I'm here to help. I'll protect you, I promise. He whispered softly, thinking the girl was already asleep. He then felt her shift over to get more comfortable before hearing a small voice. Do you really mean that? Naruto-kun? Satsuki asked as she was clearly half asleep. Naruto looked down to see that she was staring at him in a half-sleepy daze before nodding.